light so bright, we chase the sight. Media dreams, we take the flight. Partnerships, they lead the way. Success is what we aim today.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of The Publisher's Playbook. I'm your host, Jared Grimm, and this is the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies and stories shaping the world of publishing. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have someone that I've followed on LinkedIn for a while. You might be following her on X. It's SEO expert Lily Ray from AMSIV. If you've been navigating these turbulent waters of Google's constant algorithm updates, this episode is definitely for you. Lily's been at the forefront of SEO for over 15 years, helping brands stay on top of their game in this ever-evolving landscape. In this episode, we break down the nuances of Google's recent helpful content update, the recovery strategies that actually work, and why SEO isn't just about the numbers. It's about passion, creativity, and staying true to your brand's voice. So whether you're a seasoned publisher or just starting out, you're going to want to take notes on this one. All right, let's jump right in. Lily, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Lily, I've been following you on LinkedIn, and I have heard from multiple people that they're also following you on LinkedIn to get all these great SEO posts that you do. Why don't you give everyone a little background on you, your role at AMSIV, and why you have so many people that are just following and listening for your advice on all these Google updates and SEO?
Yeah, I have been doing SEO for almost 15 years now. I oversee the SEO team at AMSIV with a few other directors. I'm one of like 4 or 5 directors that oversee a pretty big team of about 30 plus people. I'm actually VP now, and I've been doing SEO on the agency side for 12 plus years. So I've touched every possible category. I've worked on probably hundreds of different client accounts. And in the last couple of years, in my new role as VP of SEO strategy and research at AMSIV, I double as not only working, with clients, with my teammates, with the other directors, but also doing daily research about what's happening on Google and in the SEO space. And I have a lot of different tools that I use and a lot of different data that I look at in case studies and clients and everything like this. So I try to share what I see publicly because the SEO industry is only as good as, people coming together and sharing what they find. So
Yeah.
try to do my part.
No, you're doing a great job. And I'm curious, did 7-year-old Lily decide that you wanted to be in SEO? At what point did you decide, hey, I really am interested in this field? Because you've been doing it for 15 years, which isn't a lifetime, but in the world of SEO, that's a high percentage of the total time there has been SEO, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of my life.
Yeah.
It's my entire adult life has been dedicated to this craft, more or less. I I didn't know when I was 7 that I'd be doing this. I knew that I wanted to be a drummer, which I still am, so that's kind of
Nice.
cool. But um, I, it's kind of like all the things in my life came together in a way where this career makes a lot of sense for me. Like the signs were there, and the
Mm,
things were there in my childhood. Like my father is retired software engineer, distinguished software engineer he was at Sun Microsystems and then Oracle for like 35 years. My brother's a web developer. He's been a web developer his whole life since we were children.
mm,
So like I grew up in a very techie environment
yeah.
in California, the Bay Area. And so a lot of the things that I've experienced and learned throughout my SEO career have been like I've like texted my dad and brother to be like, oh, what do you think about this? And how do you do this and
Yeah.
this and that, So there's that element, but then SEO is like so creative and marketing oriented, and there's a lot of like writing and ideation, and that's kind of more how my brain works. So that side's really come naturally to me. But it's also very like interpersonal and social and like understanding audiences and being able to work with other people, work with teams and everything like that. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I love what I do very much.
That's probably a myth of SEO is that I think a lot of people think it's like sitting in Ahrefs or SEO mods and just looking at numbers and graphs all day. And I was curious because, like you said, you're a drummer. I think you DJ as well. Like that's a very creative aspect of life. And I was curious if you find that SEO, like the Venn diagram of being a musician and being an SEO expert? Is there like any crossover? But it does sound like it's a fairly creative field.
There's a ton of musicians in the SEO industry for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, but the SEO is a really big, broad category that means a lot of different things. And even on my team, we have anywhere between 30 and 35 people if you count interns and things like that. But some of them are people that like to sit at home all day, every day on the computer, looking at code and looking at tech SEO issues and living in Spotify and, the crawling tools and ideally not talking to anyone or like talking to other dev teams or talking to other tech SEOs. Like that's absolutely one application for SEO. And there's a whole world of that's tech SEO. There's conferences just for tech SEO. There's very like nerdy discussions that happen in the tech SEO space, but there's a whole other side of SEO, which is let's say like link building and digital PR. And there's a whole other side, which is content creation and optimization. And like ideally you can kind of do all of them or, you
Yeah.
have people that can help you with all of them, but it's a very broad thing. So whatever reputation people have about, or like stereotype that people have about SEO, it's probably a lot more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm a little bit newer to, I've been in publishing and tech most of my career, but I'm newer to this SEO space. And that's because, impact is in the affiliate space, and like search is a major driver of traffic to like the vast majority, especially content affiliates. Like if you're a publisher that's writing reviews, you're counting on search to represent like upwards of 50% or more of the audience that comes to your site. So
Yeah,
there's this big update, right? Google's helpful content update, which I believe, has been, it was a separate initiative for a while. Now it's being rolled in more. I was wondering if you could maybe just like explain what this Google helpful content update is, the timeline on it, and then we can move into like some of the effects it's had on the space.
sure. Yeah, I can. This is my world.
Hmm.
I can tell you every day, every detail, everything that's happened because I've been living in this world. But yeah, in August of 2022, Google launched the helpful content update for the first time and a helpful content ranking system. So it's a new way that Google evaluated sites. And at the time, it was a new ranking demotion for sites that met the minimum threshold of unhelpfulness, essentially. So Google has its new proprietary ranking system that's going to determine if a website meets that threshold across all the pages on the site. And we've come to learn that that basically means those pages are extremely over optimized for SEO at the, you know, at the cost of providing a good, helpful user experience. And really like ultimately Google was probably getting too much feedback from Google searchers that they were tired of reading all this like SEO content that what didn't
Yeah.
really feel like it was for humans. So that was launched in 2022. It wasn't until September of 2023 that Google updated the helpful content update, and we felt it in a really big way. Then it started to impact thousands and thousands of largely like small publishers, small
Mm.
sites, niche blogs, recipe blogs, travel blogs, smaller sites. Um, and that's when it started to become a really big public discussion about what was happening. And then, yeah, it was, I think it was March 2024 when Google incorporated the helpful content ranking system into its core ranking systems.
Hmm.
So that just means that now when we're not going to get a specific helpful content update anymore, we're not going to
Yeah.
get an update to the helpful content system because the helpful content system doesn't exist on its own anymore.
Right.
It's just something that Google's automatically looking at all the time with its core ranking systems. So it's less granularity now in terms of Google's communications about what's happening, but there is a core update rolling out right now, and it absolutely seems to be having a very big impact on sites that were affected by previous helpful content updates.
Interesting. So it sounds like this ranking, or however it's applied, is more punitive than, meaning like there's some sort of tag, or how would you explain? I think you've explained this as like a classifier is
Mhm.
added to certain sites, and that's how it basically identifies that this is basically like unhelpful content.
Yeah.
Is that the way that you'd explain it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that's actually the exact word that Google originally used is classifier, which you can think of as like a dampening effect that happens across most of the pages on the site, if not all. So it's not like one page drops and the rest is okay. You're going to see most of the pages on the site lose search visibility when that classifier is applied. They also dismantled this notion of a classifier in the last year.
Mm,
So like just when we thought we were starting to get a handle on how this thing worked, they changed how it worked. So Google was very clear that there is no classifier anymore. It's
okay.
just part of the core ranking systems. That being said, Google said that the way that the sites performed that have been impacted by this over the last year felt a whole lot like the classifier was still applied.
Mm,
There were no examples, statistically significant examples at all of any site that was impacted by the September 2023 helpful content update seeing any significant recovery until last week. And that's because Google changed its core ranking systems.
interesting. So this happens in the fall, or the big one happens in the fall, this helpful content update. These classifiers are applied to different sites. And I mean, I've explained this to people. I'm like, Google kind of, I don't know if this is the right wording, but holds a grudge, meaning like once this is applied to somebody, it takes some time. It You can't just go in, fix whatever the problem was, and then the next day everything's back to normal. It's like
Yep.
these updates take a long time for Google to come back and reclassify or re-rank. How would you? So it sounds like that's what you saw. You saw in the fall, a lot of sites get hit. Maybe you can explain like the types. You say it's a little bit more long tail or more niche sites.
Yep.
Did it affect primarily, review type content, or was it across, brand sites and publisher sites and news sites and all the rest? Maybe describe what you've seen. I know some of this will be somewhat anecdotal, but you have a 30,000 foot view and you spend all day in this. So yeah,
Yeah.
what types of sites were affected in the fall? And now with this new update that's come out, where are you seeing any signs of recovery?
Mhm. So the first thing to note is that there are other Google ranking algorithms and updates that happen concurrently. So a lot of people get really confused because they think they were hit by the helpful content update or they were hit by a what. It also didn't help that the helpful content update that happened in September 23 was sandwiched between two other core updates.
Mm,
There was one in August and one in early October. So it literally happened in the middle of those two, and each one takes 2 to 3 weeks to roll out. So there's so much noise that happened then. It's just important to note. First question, was I a helpful content update affected site? Because the behavior is very distinct. Those sites
mm,
dropped dramatically around September 17th, 2023, and they basically didn't recover. To your question, or some of them are starting to recover now, but to your question, a lot of people want to think of this because it makes sense to think in this way, like, oh, what types of niches are you seeing be hit harder than others? It was very clear to me from day one that that's not how this works. It's not about which niche you're in. It's about what type of website you have. So the types of websites that were disproportionately affected by this, we were like, I don't want to necessarily say all WordPress, but usually like niche blogs, right?
yeah.
So and a lot of them were monetized with popular monetization methods where there's a lot of ads all over the site. In some cases, very aggressive ads. There's vignette ads and autoplay ads, and they're all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of the sites that were hit had that happening. And a lot of them do have a lot of affiliate links. So even if it's not like product review pages, it's top 10, restaurants to visit in XYZ city. And then thousands and thousands of those city pages with top 10 places to visit, and all of
Right.
them are filled with affiliate links, or recipes that are filled with display ads and affiliate links, or hiking shoes or legal advice. It could be anything, but it's
Mm,
like the nature of the website is that it churns out lots of content. That content is extremely optimized for search. Search is probably where they're getting 50% plus of their traffic, maybe 80% plus. Let's say 80% of the pages on the site have aggressive monetization and very little else. Like there
yeah.
isn't an e-commerce store, there isn't a whole section of content that's not monetized. Like that's what those sites did.
Yeah.
And they had a field day. Like a lot of these people made a whole lot of money. And if you look at their trajectory of growth from 2020 to 2023, they probably thought it was going to keep going up. This
Yeah.
is what happens on Google all the time. Those of us that have worked in the SEO space for a long time have seen these patterns before. Um, and it was clear to me for a long time, this is a problem that Google's going to solve because there's too many people getting rich from SEO.
Right.
And that's not great for Google searchers. It
Right.
doesn't
It's
provide a
like
great
almost
experience.
once you've figured out if you think of it as a game and you've figured out the game and you've mastered that, you see your traffic just growing, growing, growing. And then Google's like, actually, we don't want you playing the game. So
Yeah,
just get back to creating content for audiences. So it's almost like
yeah,
the Google can see this blueprint of a site which says, hey, it's perfectly SEO optimized. The traffic is all coming in from search. It's being like every dollar is being monetized, squeezed out of it as much as like banner ads everywhere and pop-ups and affiliate
yep,
links. And says that's not what we're looking for. That's not what users are looking for. And then I imagine there's, dozens or hundreds of other signals that are saying, we can see this through like search patterns, like people are clicking on and they're leaving and they're going to another site that answers the question better,
yep,
or
yep.
something more along that line. So what do one of these sites, what did you see them do, or what did you guys probably help them, a lot of your customers, navigate this? What was it that they had to change with their sites or the recommendations that you would make?
It's really hard because you have to get to like the heart of why this site exists. And it these were this was probably the hardest work like I've ever done just in terms of like client relationships
Mm,
and changing the behavior or like especially how long it took these sites to start to see a recovery, like no hope in sight, that type, like
yeah,
this type of environment where it's like, okay, you have to just trust people that have worked in the SEO space for a while that have done recoveries from previous Google penalties and algorithm updates and everything, that these are the patterns that are probably hurting you. And they'll say, well, those pages have made me tons of money. And
yeah,
you're like, exactly.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
we need to like do something about all this content that has historically driven all of your traffic and all of your success because the rules have changed or the Google's onto you now. So it's just, I mean, we have a bunch of tools and a bunch of data that we use to see this at scale, but it's getting to the heart of the problem and trying to surface like truly valuable content and reducing the content that was really engineered primarily for SEO purposes or changing it. So it's like, many sites that were affected were doing things like ranking the products that they recommend in order of potential affiliate commissions.
mm,
That's just
yeah,
obvious. Like when you're
yeah,
looking at it, it's like, is that really the best pair of pants to
right,
wear on that mountain? It's like,
right. Or is it just the highest commissionable amount?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So when you start to get to those like mildly deceptive patterns on the site, you have to go in there and really think to yourself, am I providing something that Google would really want to showcase in the top
right,
results? And
right,
then you have to go through all your content with a fine-tooth comb and really start to make those changes. That's like the content side. And there's so much other SEO stuff that we do from a technical perspective, a structural perspective, all of that. But you have to do all of that stuff. And you have to do it in an aggressive way where a year from now, which is now, when Google decides to change its systems, it can see that you've made a lot of progress.
yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
not every
not just
site could
like you're
afford to
not
do
just
that.
like adding meta tags to your images or whatever. Like it's you're having to make some fundamental changes. It's actually a little bit counterintuitive because what you might end up looking at is your best performing pages are the ones that are causing this problem, possibly, right? Like
Yeah.
you might have some top performing and they have this huge drop off, and it's pretty easy to identify then, hey, in October, November, we fell off a cliff with our best performing pages. I wonder why that happened, and all our search traffic is gone. And you're right, there's like this, not quite blind faith, but this, like, you have to make these changes. It might take, in this case, like nearly a year. Like the sites are sitting there for months with probably no drastic recovery or any recovery in a lot of
No, they went
cases.
down. They went down.
Yes. Can you imagine sitting, well, you can imagine this, but you're sitting there as like this review site that focuses on some niche. Things have been going amazing leading up until fall. Like you're having the best year ever. Falls
Yep.
off of a cliff. You're staffing up accordingly. You're like probably doing, paid SEM as well. Falls off a cliff, and then you have to wait like 9 months, make all these changes with almost no clear signal that you're doing the right thing. So how along that path, I'm curious, just you from like your team account managing customers where you're making these changes, let's say up until January, February, and they're still seeing like virtually no positive results from it. Did
You're
you?
just
Yeah, I
you're
guess that's why you say
describing
it's a hard conversation.
you're describing my life for the past year. So first and foremost, this it's like Groundhog Day for me and for a lot of people in the SEO space. In a way that's like it's almost frustrating, and this is why I post as frequently as I do because I've seen this before, I've done this before, I've lived this before.
Yeah,
I started my SEO career with the Google Penguin update,
yeah,
and the exact same thing happened. It was just links at that time. Everybody was buying links. That was a way to manipulate Google's algorithms. It was a blind spot for Google. Links mattered too much to Google, and everybody found out, reverse engineered it, and there was a whole, there
yeah,
still is obviously, but there's a huge underbelly marketplace economy for link buying and selling,
yeah.
right? At the time, it was 100,000 times more effective than it is now and easier to do.
Right.
So I had my first in-house SEO job and I just bought a bunch of links for them and they got penalized by Penguin. And it was
Mm,
the same thing. Like we went from having our best month ever to literally losing every single thing. And then I had to try to get back in Google's good graces. And it was the exact same story. It took 1 to 2 years for anybody to recover from Penguin. It took 1 to 2 years for anybody to recover from Panda. Medic update as well. Like we've all seen this over and over. The helpful content sites that like I've talked to and I've worked with and everything, for me, they feel like a whole new cast of characters that like weren't in the SEO conversation before that.
yeah,
But it was very frustrating, of course, to like, number one, talk to these people on a personal level that are dealing with this because that's always devastating. Like a lot of them had no idea that they were going to end up in this situation. But to also tell them like I have a video of myself from like 6 months ago where I'm like, guys, it's going to take a year.
yeah.
And people got really, really upset for the last few months. Hasn't happened yet. I'm like, hasn't been a year,
Right, right.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. We got a few months left here. How do you
Yeah.
rank this update? You've been doing this for long enough, and like you said, you saw Penguin and Panda. You've seen all of these updates. Where does this one, this helpful content update, specifically rank in your like biggest Armageddon moments of SEO, would you say?
Well, what's different about this one compared to Panda and Penguin is, at least from my perspective, Panda and Penguin, we knew, those of us that were impacted by that. I mean, I was naive and it was the beginning of my career, so I didn't exactly know, but we knew we were playing with fire. And we
Mm.
were doing it very intentionally. I was buying links on blackhatworld.com.
Right,
Like
right. It's called
that's
Black Hat.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
place that you go to violate Google's guidelines, right?
Right.
Um, so it's just a matter of time until you get caught, unless you're really clever. The sites that were impacted by the helpful content update, sure, many of them were playing with fire. Many of them were automating content creation in a way that was kind of lazy, you know, using AI to create 50,000 articles about celebrity net worth and not fact checking anything and having fake authors and stock photos and then putting ads everywhere. I'm sorry, that's lazy. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not a site that should rank on Google over time. So those sites were affected. But there's a whole lot of other sites that weren't doing any of that. They were doing great quality content and they were making a living writing about gaming or about recipes or whatever, and they truly didn't know that what they were doing was going to get them in trouble with Google, and they actually thought what they were doing was working because it was working so well on Google.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating because there's a really big disconnect between what those people knew and how heavily they were hit. With the Penguin update, yeah, if you're penalized and you're removed from Google, it's like, well, I shouldn't have been buying links. With the helpful content update, a lot of these sites lost 95% of their visibility for a year.
Yeah.
That seems like Google, I've said this many times, Google has heard me say it. They went way too far
Right.
and way too many sites were affected that shouldn't have been.
Right. It wasn't this super specific, like we've got some bad actors, we're going to close it down, these bad actors. It's such a broad update and it affected so many sites
Yeah,
that there was going to be some like almost like collateral damage where it
tons.
wasn't,
Yeah.
it was people that were just, trying to reach their audience, probably maybe weren't even doing perfect SEO, like technically perfect SEO, but got affected by it. So what are like some specific things from a content perspective that you've seen that work? Because now we're in this August, update that's happened, and you have been posting about some recovery. First question is like, is this one or two out of 100 sites that are recovering, Or do you see it as like, hey, the trend has happened. These sites that have done some activities, positive activities, are going to come back at some portion of it. And what do you find that those sites did that was effective?
Yeah, so I mean, anecdotally, like the ones that I've worked on and my team has worked on, um, most of the ones that we anticipated would see recover and have done a lot of hard work have started to recover. And recover is a strong word because it's the first week. They're starting to move up. It's nowhere near what they lost. I don't know if they'll ever get back to that point, but any positive direction after a year and the rate of positive growth that they're seeing is very encouraging. Um, there's a lot of other sites that I look at in my data that I'm not as familiar with that are seeing really extreme recoveries
Mm,
that I need to dig more into what happened there. It takes a while to like do some reverse engineering of what changed, like how did the
yeah.
site look last year? Like, if you're not working on it, it's harder to understand what changed. I do also, acknowledge and understand that there are a lot of sites that didn't do anything and they recovered, right? And
Mm,
people are freaking out about this, but I'm like, guys, it's the same exact thing that Google just did in the first place. When Google changes its algorithms,
yeah.
some people are going to move up, some people are going to move down for random reasons because the algorithms changed. But I'm confident that like the ones that did a lot of hard work, that's why they're seeing improvements. I mean,
Right.
I'm looking every day at the Search Console graphs and they're going, yep, it's starting to go up. I'm just excited that whatever this classifier thing that may or may not have been applied has been lifted so
Yeah.
that these sites now have the opportunity to grow again.
Yeah. And what are a couple of those hard things? You mentioned like it's hard work, it takes a long time, you might not see results. What are a couple of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things you find are most successful?
Yeah, getting to getting into the patterns of what got the site flagged in the first place. Most of these sites have aggressive patterns of mediocre to low quality content that was written for search,
Hmm.
plus a combination of really aggressive ads and affiliate links, plus content that lacks firsthand experience or
Right.
authenticity. If it feels like AI content, even if you wrote it, if it feels like AI content, that's not good.
Right. Right. If it's a summary of something that someone else did, or you can tell that you never tested the product yourself, right? Or it's, a super light, here's, 10 great headphones, and it's like
Yep.
cursory information about the headphones. It makes sense. So in some cases, a site might actually reduce or intentionally de-index a bunch of their like clean up and focus on maybe a lower quantity? Did you see that happening where people would reduce the quantity of content that they had and maybe focus on stuff that maybe was better for users or perform better in that way?
Yeah, I mean it's a controversial question in the SEO space, and people have a lot of different opinions. My opinion is 100% yes, that you should do that.
Right.
But you have to do it in a data-driven way. You have to look at the performance of pages and say, this whole block of pages is not doing anything for us. It's probably more of a liability than an asset,
Yeah.
and make decisions about how to manage those pages. And it's like everyone's always asking me, oh, could I just like delete all this stuff? I'm like, nothing is ever simple. This is why you hire
Yeah.
SEOs. We spend all day looking at the data and making decisions about this should redirect here, this should be no index, this should be removed, this should move here. Like that's the whole point of SEO. That's what we do. But the
Right.
idea is to think about your site and the footprint of your site as what are the pages that are indexable, which means that I'm allowing search engines to crawl and index them. And how do those pages factor into the overall profile or assessment of my site? If you have 80% or 40% of your indexable pages as like low quality, thin, spammy content, maybe you don't even know it's there, that absolutely gets factored into search engines' evaluation of your entire site. So
Right.
when you can put your best foot forward and remove all the fluff stuff and just introduce the best stuff, that's the type of work that will absolutely help you to recover with
Hmm.
future updates.
Well, there's definitely like a halo effect, I guess, that's happening, right? Like if the quality of your site and the content is all strong, like 95% of it is great, then the whole site looks good. But you could have maybe 10 or 15% that isn't good, and that's going to cloud Google's view of the entire site as well. That makes
Yeah.
a ton of sense. But you're right, it's a very, like, it feels very manual and specific to every site. Like, it would be nice if you could just, hit the button and be like, make it work for the update, right? And then it just goes and changes all the tags and you're all good.
That's that's what got us into this mess in the first place.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
everybody is trying to automate SEO. That's honestly, I think, one of the biggest culprits is that there's too many SEO tools telling people how to do SEO in a really
Right.
automated way. And
Yeah.
and then they go into their group, their whatever monetization Facebook group, where they're all
Yeah.
sharing the same tools and saying, guys, I pressed this button and it made all these new pages. And everyone's like, I'm going to try that on my site. And Google's like,
Yeah.
thank you for giving us a really obvious clue about
Right.
who's automating their SEO because it makes it easier to reverse engineer what they're doing.
Yeah, we can see that pattern very clearly across all these sites because you're right, the people do tend to follow each other. Someone finds something good, everyone just applies it, right?
Yeah.
With this, so like a lot of sites get, this kind of like punitive, they decline in traffic. Did anyone or like what group of sites did you find had a positive, maybe not even directly related, but less competition, right? All of a sudden, there's a bunch of sites that get deranked or
Mhm.
their ranking is lower. Something has to fill that void. Did you find that there was anything specific that filled this, vacuum that was created after the helpful content update?
Yeah, 100%. And it wasn't just the helpful content update, it's a variety of different Google updates. I've actually written about this a few times. Um, the combined effect of what Google just did with various updates that maybe it's undoing a little bit right now with the current core update, but I would say broad strokes the last 3 years. Sites that are focused, sites that are middlemen, right? They have affiliate content, recommendation content, review content, product reviews, this kind of thing, um, are almost all losing visibility. I know
Mm,
that's a really big statement, but like there's very few examples of affiliate sites that are doing better than they were 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah,
So that whole category's lost a lot of visibility. Of course, there's exceptions, but this is like generally speaking. Um, Reddit is by far the biggest winner, by far. Like, I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around their growth. I use
yeah,
a tool called Systrix every day to look at website visibility on Google. Reddit was number 78 last year in terms of biggest footprint, biggest organic footprint on Google US. They're number 3 right now. They moved
crazy.
from 7 a few months ago to 3 right now.
Wow.
So I think it's Wikipedia, Amazon, Reddit. Um, the amount that Reddit has absorbed, I mean, Reddit's absorbed every, like all the losses of every type of category.
Yeah, and this
Um,
isn't a new site. It's not like Reddit is a new site and moved up the rankings from like zero to hero, right? This is a site that's been around for a long time. That is a huge. Have you ever seen a site move from like 78 to 3 in that period of time in
It's
your career?
unprecedented. As far
Yeah.
as Systrix measurement goes, which is I'm a big fan of Systrix.
Yeah.
I'm time and time again it tends to be the case that their data is pretty spot on. Um, I talked to them. They said this is completely unprecedented. There's never
Wow.
been any growth this big in this short time frame.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And e-commerce is the other big winner. So, if the last year, if you typed best running shoes or best running shoes for flat feet or even running shoes, you might have seen 50 to 70% of the first page is review sites and affiliate sites.
Yeah.
This year, you probably see 2 or 3 affiliate sites and a lot more e-commerce. And then you're going to see Reddit, maybe Quora, and maybe one other forum
Right.
and
You're gonna have
social
this kind
media.
of Yeah, you're
Yeah,
gonna have a mix of a lot of different things. Whereas before it was mainly review sites.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
curious, let's say you had to, so I'm gonna put you in a spot here where you have to create an affiliate like a review site. That's it. You have no choice. You have to create one. What would you do today starting from scratch? What would be the viewpoint you would take on it?
yeah. Yeah, I like that question and I think about it a lot because I don't think it's impossible. It's definitely like a little bleak right now, but I don't think it's impossible. And I think it's exciting to think about where does the opportunity actually live because I think there still is plenty. It's just that it's not going to be the type of thing where you follow a blueprint laid out by all the other affiliates as far as like do these 20 things and you'll succeed in Google search. It's not the way of thinking about it anymore. Now it's like I mean, first of all, you have to start the affiliate brand or company or site based on something you're actually passionate about. I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to work otherwise. But then after that, it's like you're building a personal brand. That's the number one goal here. I think that that's the direction that SEO is going. It's like, who is this person? Like, the points guy or like someone
Yeah.
else who is a known face of the business, and how many signals does Google and the other search engines have that this is a real person that's really
Mm,
enthusiastic about this thing?
yeah.
Using myself and SEO as an example, like that's such an obvious entity in Google's knowledge graph that it's like she writes about SEO. She's been mentioned on all these places. She has all these social accounts. So you have to you have to like build a brand where you are, oh, that's the TikTok aspect of their business. That's the YouTube aspect of their business. These are the videos that they make. These are the pictures that they have, like filling in all the gaps where it's not just these are the 50 things I'm going to write for Google this month,
Yeah.
you know, and more robust, high quality reviews with a lot more evidence of firsthand experience.
It's so like clear that it always comes back to this general idea where you just have to create good content that you're interested in and other people are interested in. Like that is the core of it. And then things get abstracted to like, oh, this is the way that you have to set up tags and this is the way that you have to create your content and this is how many words. And a lot of it is guesswork because Google doesn't say like, here's exactly how to build a site. They give like these broad strokes of like this is how it should feel, right? And you should kind of have to guess, but there's not that much guesswork. And if you just create some really good stuff and people are really into it and they're sharing it everywhere,
Yeah.
um, that's always kind of what it comes down to. But I think having someone that lives and breathes the technical side of it, the way that like you do and other SEO experts, makes a huge difference because otherwise you are a lot more blind to it because there are technical things that you can do. So if people, I mean, I've been following you for a while. I know some other people that follow you. You post almost daily updates on LinkedIn is where I follow you. Where would you
Mhm.
recommend people, follow you to see, what you're thinking about and what you're seeing every day? Where are the best places to find you?
Yeah, so for anybody who's still on Twitter X, I
Yeah.
that's where I post not only daily but hourly.
Yeah.
Um, every time I'm working on literally anything or looking at literally anything, if I see something interesting, I share it on X. Been doing that for a while. I know a lot of people don't use that platform, so LinkedIn is where I go to take what I just figured out and make a more coherent post about it
Yeah.
when it's
Yeah.
important. So yeah, I try to post on LinkedIn almost daily when I can. Um, I intend to do more videos. They're kind of a pain, as you probably know, but there's also a lot of like podcasts and recordings and interviews and stuff that I've done as well.
Yeah.
So you can just kind of Google my name and see what comes up.
Yeah, when are you gonna have like the SEO TikTok? I follow a couple people that have like these super niches. They're in deep finance or whatever. Whereas like you think of TikTok as this like broad consumer. I'm curious if you've thought about that. Just being also like a very creative person with like music. There's tons of video and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that
yeah.
fall on that side. Have you thought of doing that, of becoming almost like a consumer facing person?
I think about it every day. I mean, if I could clone myself, I would be doing YouTube and TikTok videos daily. And there are some SEOs who manage to somehow do that. Props to
Yeah.
them. They've figured it out. I just can't do it. I mean, right now I'm working on multiple audits at the same time.
Yeah.
I have a team. I have 30 people that I'm helping oversee. I have hundreds of clients that I'm working on. It's just there's not enough hours in the day. But I would like to do more. And I know it's becoming easier now to like take a video and splice it up for TikTok pretty easily.
Yeah.
So it's my intention. I just need to find more time.
We're not that far from you just doing like an AI clone of yourself and then just letting that thing do it for a little
That'll be
while.
nice. I'm looking
For
forward
sure.
to it, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Well, for now, we'll put your LinkedIn and your X handles in the show notes here. But thank you so much for coming on the show. This was super insightful for me. I think our audience of publishers. I mean, the podcast is called The Publisher's Playbook. I think you've given some great tips, and also this idea that sometimes patience, right? Like you need to make these changes. Things don't change overnight, and you just got to like stay the path, right? So appreciate you being on the
Yeah,
show.
anytime. It
And
was a lot of fun.
for sure. We'll make sure everyone's following your daily or hourly updates.
Awesome. Thanks
All
for
right.
having
Thanks,
me.
Lily.
Lights so bright, we chase the sky. Media dreams, we take the flight. Partnerships, they lead the way. Success is what we aim today. Build the buzz with every post. Make the most, we coast to coast. From news to trends, we never stop. The publisher's playbook got it locked.